Hello TBI people, it's Jake. After a long time away from the camera and some shorter time away from the game, back with a couple deck profiles for you. This will be one of them. This is a Dragon Zwei deck. For any horrible camera angles or lighting, I apologize. So, Dragon Zwei deck, obviously playing Dragon Zwei. It's a special flag. You can only use monsters with dragon in their attribute, and even though it says generic cards, it's obviously eroded out. And your starting hand is 4, gauge is obviously 2, and your life becomes 20. So this means I can't use any spells or items, thus making it different from Ein already. It's Kyoya's deck from the anime, for those who don't watch, because they're that small amount. So our buddy, from the secret pack from DBTO3, which is when Zwei first dropped, is Retainer of the Demonic Dragon Destructor. It's a size 0 from Star Dragon World. It is Neo Dragon with 2/1/1, and its ability is Finalizer. When it enters the field, pay 2 life and draw 2 cards. Come on, focus. Pay 2 life and draw 2 cards if your flag is Dragon Zwei. You can only use this once per turn. So it's good. I use it as the buddy because it's a size 0, so I can play it on top of any field. And by using the buddy call, I mitigate 1 life point of its cost the first time I try it. Now, you can probably tell there's a lot of things here, but this is a dry Zwei deck. So we'll take the nice and fancy SP1. We go. The first card I'll show you is our flag. This is Dragon Dry. Now a flag in a deck. This is really unheard of until near the end of Triple D. So you cannot choose this card as your flag to start the fight. You must put this card into your deck and use your initial flag as Zwei. Now it has the flag rules, which is only monsters with dragon its attribute. And if your life would become 0 and you have this card in hand, take this, put it on top of your Dragon Zwei. Your card is now named Dragon Dry, which affects certain other cards in your deck. Put all cards in your field into the drop zone, and your life gets restored to 5. Now, you play 2 of this card, because yes, when you're playing the flag in the deck, you can play more than 1 of it. But you can't use Dry on top of Dry, which I've seen people online do, and those are people online. But certain cards in this deck, depending on which your flag is, changes what it does. So that's a very important rule to the deck. Now, you have a Dry-specific card. This is basically your replacement for Occultic Wallmouth. This is Demonic Dragon Deity, the Sun, Gaon. This is your size 10, because it has to be a monster to use in the deck, so why not make it a giant size that really shouldn't exist. 15/5/12. You can only play this card if your flag is Dragon Dry, and when you are transformed into this card, it cannot be destroyed, returned to hand, or nullified. Or its abilities cannot be nullified. When you are transformed into this card, your opponent cannot draw cards during the next turn after it's played. When this card attacks, pop everything on their field that's a monster, and you can discard 2 size 3 or greater monsters and pay 2 gauge. If you do, gain 5 life. And transform cost is 3 gauge. This thing is all out busted. It's not exactly your goal to get to this card, but it's a good end game. Now, we're getting into more of the cards you can play while you're still in Zwei. These 2 are literally only while you're in Dry. Though, using Iwakite, a card you'll see, which is right over here, this gets some dumb combos, which we'll explain when we get to it. So this is your Ozzy, the reason you want to be Kyoya. Black Sky Sun Dragon, Ozzy Dahaka. Can only play it if it's Dragon Zwei, which means, sorry about that, had to itch my face. Which means if your flag is currently Dry, this card's kind of worthless if it's sitting in your hand. So you pay 3 gauge, put 2 monsters, not 1 like any other Ozzy, from your field into the drop zone. When this card attacks, before it pay a life, and you may stand this card. The timing of this is before it attacks, you have to declare if you're paying a life. Many people do that the wrong way, I used to. And when this card is destroyed, you can search for a card to add it to your hand from your deck, and then take 2 damage. This triggers Dry by searching a card. This also because it says search for a card, not anything specific, you technically don't have to show people what you're searching. They just know you've got a card. as long as you're not showing 2 cards. So they can ask how many you took, I guess. And there's a Dragon Deity from Darkness Dragon World, like that actually matters. 10/3/10, size 3. So that is a heavy staple in your deck. You abuse that ability to search out things because you can search anything you want. Now, we get on to another staple within any form of Zwei. Once the camera focuses. This is Transcend Dragon Emperor Iwakite. There's a different version coming out in Crossing Generations that's a little more powerful and a little different. So this is to put 2 gauge and the top card of your deck into the soul, then act, pay 2 life, put the top 3 cards of your deck into your drop zone, and call up to 1 of them by paying the call cost. And it becomes a size 0 as long as it stays on the field. So if Iwakite dies, you could still have potentially a size 0 Ozzy on your field. Or, if you're in dry and you activate this card, a size 0 Gain on your field. Because as a monster, Gain is free to call. I've done that twice, and it gets busted. Especially when you also equip your other Gain as a weapon. Now this, I don't really know many people using this in actual Star Dragon World and actual Ancient World, but then again, I'm not very knowledgeable. But in Zwei, this card is a godsend because you cannot mill anything except for monsters. The only thing you can mill is monsters, so it's basically send 3 to the drop and then pick 1. There's no chance of failing, except for 2 out of your 57 card deck. So it's also a buy that sits there. Next, you have another size 3, which is what is that? Terminus Dragon Emperor Endevo. So it's free to call, which is really good. 8/6, size 3. And this is one of the cards from the Set 1 Secret Pack. So this one varies between Zwei and Dry effects, but I like it because it's got my 2 favorite effects in the game. When your flag is Zwei, it gets double attack, and when it's dry, it gets moved because you're on low life. And no matter what, when this card dies, when this card is destroyed, put the top card of your deck into Gauge. So it also acts as Gauge Excel, which I think is pretty goddamn fun. Now we move on to another card from our Dragon Fighters Secret Pack. Now, I'm going to be honest, I cannot pronounce this name. I just call it Retainer Soul Buddy. It is a size 1 with 4/2/2, but you're honestly never playing this card unless you mill it off Iwakite. Sometimes you'll drop it for your 2 crit size 0. But it has an act ability to put it into the soul of a size 3 monster on your field. This card is in the soul of a size 3 monster, it gets Soul Guard. So basically, you can put in any size 3 in your deck. Gives it Soul Guard. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to put it inside Ozzy, because every time it even loses a soul, that counts as being destroyed. So you can abuse Ozzy's take 2 damage and search thing multiple times without it ever leaving the field. Especially if you stack multiple of these in the soul. Also, for those secret tricksters trying to make Prism Zwei a thing, play 4 of these. It makes everything busted. You'll sit on Author forever. Now we have 4 copies of our Buddy, which we already went over, so we don't need to go over it again. Next, from the DBTO3 Secret Pack, is Retainer Demonic Dragon King Gorai. So if your flag is Dragon Zwei, you can discard this card from your hand and gain 2 gauge, just by basically breathing up until you have Dry on the field. But it's a 4/2/2. At least you can play this card and it's a good crit, I guess, if you're milling it off Iwakite when you have Dry out. Next, a card mainly for Gauge Excel. We have Death Wizard Dragon. This is a size 2, 3/3. When this card enters the field, mandatory take 1 damage and gain 2 gauge. Now, it kind of sits there as a cheapo little crap one after you do its ability, but if you can't get your opponent to kill you, it's definitely a good way to not only proc off Dry, but gain 2 gauge at the same time, so why not? Now we have a card from the X-Set Secret Pack, which is Retainer Demonic Dragon Devil or Dragon. It's a size 1 from Dragon World, 3/1/3, and its counteract ability is you may discard this card from your hand, and if your flag is Dragon Zwei, reduce damage by 3 the next time you take damage, or if your flag is Dry, counter, gain 2 life. That's pretty good either way. I mean, If I know my opponent well enough, I like to save all 4 of these in my hand and a bunch of size 3s, do Gain, and then discard and gain like 26 life. Yay, plus plays. Because this card gets out a lot of Gauge Excel, so you will have extra Gauge. Next, an interesting tech me and my friends thought we'd throw in. Rescue Dragon Leader, Immortal Spirit, because ever since 800 EBO2, all Rescue Dragons are dragons. So pay 2 Gauge, and when this destroys a monster, draw a card. It's 8/1/6, size 3, and it has double attack. So if you have it on field, it's not going to die anything. That's potentially 2 draws per turn by attacking. You don't want to poke 1 for 1 if you don't have to with this thing. That's the idea, because big hand advantage. Now, I know we're jumping all over secret packs, but this is about the best way to sort it due to my friend messing up the order of the deck, which I had to reorganize. So now we have Spawn of the Demonic Dragon Herod. This is from Dragon Fighter Secret Pack. It's a size 2, 5/2/4. You may only call this if your flag is Dragon Zwei, and when this card enters the field, pay 2 life. If you do, search your deck for 1 Azutahaka de Eva and put into your hand, shuffle the deck. Then, when this card is put from the field to the drop zone, pay 1 Gauge. If you do, a monster in your field gets +2/+2 for this turn. It's kind of a waste when you have Dry out. Like, this card will do absolutely nothing for you. You never really put this card out when your flag is dry, because you can't play it, and then it kind of becomes a waste in your hand. And I don't really use the +2/+2 ability because I'm just going to keep attacking again with the Ava. And it's a good body if you're going to drop it turn 1 just to search the Ava, because you're starting at 20 life. Like, why can't you give up a little life? Next, we go to size 1. This is a double rare from Dragon Fighters. Darkness Dragon World, Executioners, and Dragon and Deity attribute. Size 1, 2/2/2 stats. Spawn of the Demonic Dragon Booze. Now, it's got ability Negative Thoughts. When this card is put from your field to your drop zone, put the top card of your deck into the Gauge. Then, if you have 3 or more different worlds card names in your drop zone, draw a card. So, with all these different worlds among my deck, you're going to draw that card. So it's a free charge and draw for literally letting it die, or throwing it into the drop zone for Daeva. Now we have a classic, let the camera focus, Fortune Dragon for Bolka. It's Ancient World size 1/4/05. You're never calling this thing unless you mill it off of Iwakite. It's the worst possible option anyway. If you have a size 3 on your field, you may discard this card from your hand. If you do, put the top 2 cards of your deck into your Gauge and lifelink 1. This is more Gauge Excel, like extra Gorai, except you can also use this when Dry is active. Now, let's say you have some kind of size 3 such as this or this or this on your field, and you don't draw your Soul Guard buddy, and you really want to keep that thing on field. You have, from the Golden Buddy decks, you have Retainer of the Demonic Dragon Vong, a size 0, 3/1/1, counteract. If you have a size 3 or more dragon attribute monster on your field, discard this card from your hand and pay 1 life. If you do, choose a monster in your field for the next time this turn it would be destroyed. It remains on field. It's basically an extra 8 Soul Guard for a life. And you're starting with 20 life. There's no point you shouldn't be able to do this. Now we have 2 new added techs that are tech cards. One of them is very common, one of them isn't. The one that isn't very common is this guy, Deity of the Cavalry, Fiery Cavalry Dragon, Remedius. I only play 2 of them, this is all I could get my hands on. Size 3, 7/2/5, pay a Gauge, so it's a very cheap size 3. No Soul Guard, but has Calling of the Voice of Fire. When this attacks once per turn, you may pay 1 Gauge and put a monster from your drop zone to your hand. And has double attack. That's so generic, it's great in this deck. It's free Daevas, free Iwakites, free Endervelts, and free Immortal Spirits, basically. And then it sits there as a body for 1 attack, which is great. Then, the common thing, Bossole. I shouldn't have to explain what this does, but there's going to be someone out there. So it's pay 2 Gauge, put on top of any monster, put any monster from your field into this card's soul, not on top. If there is 1 or more cards in this card's soul, it gets critical +1 and reduces any damage you take by 1 every instance. And then counter, pay a gauge if you do destroy the monster in your opponent's center, and double attack and soul guard. Very simple. Size 3, 727. Now, out of my collection of all my Zwei cards, I happen to get out a couple of techs at the point where we're in X set 1 meta. Just some important cards you might want to consider. We have Glacies. I mean, it's standard. If you have size 3 on field, pay a life, nullify the attack. 3, 3, 4. It's okay to mill off of Kite, and has lifelink 1, so it's worth it. From the Dragonfighter Secret Pack, Retainer the Demonic Dragon Fielder. 5/2/5, size 2. When it enters the field, mill the top card. If it's a monster, draw a card. If it's a monster with dragon, draw a card. If it's anything else, gain a life. There's 2 cards in your deck that are going to make you gain life. Everything else, it's a +1 draw. So it's 1 for 1 pretty much. Now you have from X set 1, White Crystal Dragon Ferment. It's a size 0, 1/3/1, counteract. During your opponent's turn, pay 1 gauge and call this card from your hand and change the attack target, during an attack, change the target of the attack to this card, basically. So it's Mock Braver, but unlike the original Mock Braver, this thing is also a dragon, first of all. Second of all, you don't have to call it straight to your center, and it's a 0, so you can have it out while you have Ozzy if you really have no other way to save it. And then, if you can't get OG Ball Soleil, you can have Blue Sun Ball Soleil, same call cost, 2 gauge, and put a monster in your field into this card's soul. And the act abilities, you may pay 2 life, destroy all monsters in your opponent's field. You may only use this once per turn. Same exact stats, 7/2/7, size 3, double attack and soul guard. And that is everything I've considered for my Zwei deck. It goes rather well from time to time. I haven't really brought it to a competitive scene yet, but it'll be coming soon enough. Thank you very much for watching. Everybody have a nice day. TBI Jake signing out.